Ladies and gentlemen, I have spent the past few days actually thinking about how I wanted to approach this topic because I have been a gamer for a long time and I follow a lot of various gaming controversies. I'm very in the loop in that sense, but this game here, ladies and gentlemen, this is the one of all games where I have a history of this, where the reason why it took so long to even hit record and figure out what I wanted to do is I was debating on whether or not I wanted to just get a bunch of B-roll and trash Paradox and how I wanted to go about this. And I could do a whole video on the shattered dreams that are the very first time I found out that Bloodlines was going to get a sequel. And people talk about the development hell of 2019. Folks, that ain't shit, okay? I remember the first time this game was born only to die sometime back around 2009. I can't remember the exact year, so if I'm off on that, forgive me, because at this point, time is just lost. But I remember the first time I even heard about Bloodlines and I was determined to play it. And back then, I had a completely shitty computer and it was completely incapable of running it. And even just getting the game back then was a fiasco because it was one of those weird niche games that it was like hard to find. And back then it was harder to get PC games. You had to do a lot of juggling and going through hoops, and it was a whole thing. And I became super into the first game. It's one of my favorite games to this day ever made, for all its flaws. I was one of the cult followers of this particular franchise of Vampire the Masquerade, to the point where I now have a tabletop book and dice because I was interested in playing with some friends of mine, and I'm not even really a tabletop player, but just because it was Bloodlines related, I was like, yeah, I'll give it a shot. That is how into this game that I've been, and I have watched this game be born and die no less than I think 3 times before where we are right now, which arguably is a fate worse than death. But that, believe it or not, is not even what I'm here to talk about. Again, that could be a whole other video in itself, and a long one at that, because there's a history there that goes back almost 20 years. But I hear a lot of stuff in the news lately that I had varied reactions, from I thought it was really funny to outright cringy. And so let's look at this article real quick, okay? So pre-orders getting refunded on the PlayStation Store, but here's the thing, that $30 DLC for base game stuff that everybody's real mad at, and you know, Paradox is, you know, making adjustments, you know. So I'll just read this part here. So in response to the backlash over core content being locked behind a $30 DLC, an unforced error at the end of a long, challenging development across 2 studios, Paradox noted that PlayStation customers will be able to place a new pre-order for the game after it finally announces those adjustments on September 17th. So I want to talk about that. All right, the supposed announcements where they're going to walk back this DLC for base game content stuff. Because I hear a lot of people talking about this like it's a done deal, and of course what they're going to do in this announcement is they're absolutely going to remove the $30 paywall. The game's not doing well, so they want the sales, and so they're going to remove that $30 paywall for what should be base game content. And all I could do was sit back and laugh and say, hey guys, welcome aboard. I take it this is your first Paradox game, huh? Let me explain something to you guys. For those of you who are into Bloodlines, and so because of that, you're just now becoming affiliated with Paradox, I'm somebody who has played Paradox games for a little while now. I like the Crusader Kings games. Some of the other ones are pretty cool. I have a few of them. I really don't play those. To be honest, it's mostly just Crusader Kings 2 and now 3. I play that. And CK3 is having its own whole mess in itself that is, funny enough, tied to DLC. That's why when I heard about all this, I just laughed, because as soon as I saw Paradox's name go on this title, I knew immediately that the minimum dollar price for entry was going to be $100. But you know something? Before I get into the whole Paradox thing, let me just say this. I was so committed to this game. I was so happy that this game was finally coming around that I had made peace with it immediately, right away. All I said was, you know what? If they do this right, and if they give me the game that I have been waiting for so long, if they give me a high quality, unforgettable experience that has plenty of content, and they decide to add more, maybe add some DLCs, you know what? I'll pay it. I'll pay $100. I'll pay $200. I'll pay $300. I would have paid an exorbitant amount of money to get the game that I wanted so bad. But that's not what's happening. The DLC piece, I'm here to let people know what apparently a lot of people don't seem to know. But that's not even what I'm angriest about at all. So I'll cover this in two phases. Number one, folks, if you're new to Paradox, crack dealers have more integrity than Paradox, okay? And let me explain what I mean by that, because that sounds like a bizarre statement, right? It's really not. So let's break this analogy down. Crack dealer sells you a couple rocks, you pay him $20, you get your crack, end of transaction, right? You go and you spiral down the bowels of addiction, and you get that much closer to the destruction of your life, right? Okay, but the transaction itself is simple. It's straightforward. Assuming you're not getting robbed, you pay your $20, you get your rocks, and you move on with your day. Paradox works a little different. The way that this works is you pay your $20 and you look at the bag and you notice, hey, this isn't crack, this is Coke. What's going on here? And then that's when Paradox drops it on you. Oh, yeah, you got to pay for the baking soda DLC. So you do that. Oh, yeah, we forgot to tell you, you got to pay for the water and the pot DLC. Oh, and you got to pay for the Pyrex DLC. And also, you need to pay for the stove DLC and the heating bill DLC. And fast forward about 10 to 20 DLCs and about $720 later, you will finally get those same two crack rocks that would have just been a straightforward transaction from somebody with just a little bit more integrity while infecting their neighborhood, okay? Paradox is a company that for a lot of people has flown under the radar because they're not as big as EA or Activision, but let me make this fucking clear. Paradox is worse than Activision and EA combined. And that's assuming that every single allegation at Activision is true. In the worst case scenario, even still, Paradox is worse. I want you, if you want to test this theory, look up any game with a Paradox name on it. In Steam, you could pull it up right now. go ahead and look up, say, Crusader Kings or Stellaris or, let's see, Hearts of Iron, Europa Universalis, dozens of them. And you're going to see a common theme. You're going to see somewhere between 10 and 55 plus DLCs. Half of them are base game content. The other half are shitty DLCs that were half-cocked, half-cooked, and full of bugs and actually make the game worse. And oftentimes charging prices that, say, for the amount of content they're actually adding, really they should be charging you about $5, maybe $10 on the upper side. But instead, they go ahead and charge you either 20 or 30. Okay, so when this is all said and done, if you were unlucky enough to buy all these DLCs when none of these games were on sale, you can actually go and see for yourself the total price. It is not uncommon to see a Paradox labeled game for anything under $400 to $500. That's the world of Paradox. So for all you people who are expecting tomorrow to see people from Paradox come out and go, you know what, guys, that you're right, that was a terrible move. It's been a rough development cycle. We're under a lot of pressure. We're going to go ahead and make this right. We're going to remove the paywall. We'll go ahead and include this stuff for free. I'm not going to tell you for a fact that's not going to happen because, I'm not Jostradamus here, okay? I can't predict every single future, but here is what you could expect for tomorrow. What you could expect is for Paradox people to come out and do one of two things. What they're going to do is option one, and this is the better option of the two. Option one is they're going to walk that price point back, and they're going to go from 30 to either 20. Yeah, 20. I was going to say 15. No, they're going to bump it down to 20 is what's going to happen. Or what they're going to do is keep the $30 price tag, but they're going to add value to the DLC, mostly with bullshit skins or outfits or other meaningless content that doesn't actually add to the game itself. That's your best option. Here's the other option, and I've seen them do this, folks. If you think there's no chance of this happening, again, you must be new to Paradox. They are professionals at dealing with this. Oftentimes, this week that they take before they make an announcement and make a decision, oftentimes that's just a tactic, folks. The reason they're giving you this week is not because they're trying to figure out how to roll everything back and how to, whether or not they're considering, do we just really drop the price, or do we remove the full paywall, or do we, put one class in for free but still have one behind a paywall that's shorter? No. This is all a delay tactic. This week is for you to cool off and for them to buy time so that they can get a little bit closer to that 30 days away mark. Then they're going to double down on their decision, and they're going to either give you some kind of rationale for why they're doing what they're doing. They're going to come up with some reasons why they have to do it and how they'll roll out additional free content down the line for those people who buy the DLC. They'll do something along those lines. Or I've seen them do both of these. They'll just come right out and say, look, guys, we thought about it. They didn't think about it. They knew what they were going to do the whole time. But they're going to tell you they really did some hard deliberation. And we decided we stand by our decision. And, You can suck our dicks, you can lick our bags, you can nibble our taints, and just go fuck yourselves while you're at it. That is the Paradox way. That is how they do things. That's how they've been doing things for a long time. Ask anybody you know who plays grand strategy games and who is familiar with Paradox. They've been doing this for years, even to the detriment of their own studio. They have actually had so many problems lately that I believe they've had to close down 2 different studios where there was somewhere between like 30 and 45 employees. I can't remember the exact number, but I believe it was 2 studios, and their entire job was to make the DLCs that they basically make about 70% of their money on. Like, their base games, yeah, sure, they make money on those initial sales, but the bulk of how Paradox makes their money and how they expect to do this is they're going to start out with a base game DLC, and you'll notice, guys, there are, and a lot of people might not notice this because, again, they may not even have played the first Bloodlines. I saw one dude, he was doing a first time play reaction. He did a couple hours of the game, and he was like, oh man, it meant so much to me that Paradox White Wolf chose me to play the game. I'm so excited. And I thought, oh man, that's cool. Good for you, bro. I'm glad. You know, I thought he was like me, just a dedicated fan, and was so excited to be picked. No, turns out the reason he got picked, even though he didn't know it, and I won't say the guy's name because I don't want to throw shade his way. He was a nice guy. He was doing really well. His video had like almost 700,000 views, but that was part of the reason they chose him. The other reason was, by his own admission, he had never played the first Bloodlines. So he was just talking about how cool the game was. Man, I just love the atmosphere. Clearly, he had been giving talking points because the things that he was praising, it was so tailor-made to address criticisms. It was fucking stupid. But then on top of that, he kept talking about how awesome the combat was and, oh, there's choices. I like how the choices matter. Motherfucker, there are no choices. There are no dialogue. There's not even skill trees dedicated to dialogue. In the first game, there was intimidate, there was some kind of charm, seduction, and there was persuasion, okay? There were multiple different ways that you could manipulate people through dialogue, and a variety of other passive skills that changed the way you would play through the game. So there were skill trees dedicated to security and lockpicking and all different kinds of skills so that you could play how you wanted to play. If you look at the game that they've shown, all of the skills, even though they try to tell you that there are passive skills, they're fucking stone-faced lying to you from what we saw. I mean, we saw the skill trees. We saw them. They showed them. It was all combat related, all of it. There were entire skill trees in the first game that had nothing to do with combat. They just helped augment your other abilities so that you could move through the game however you wanted. But that's not there. But this dude was too naive to know that. He didn't understand that the reason he was picked is because he was the willing idiot with a far reach. And again, no disrespect to him. I'm not saying he's literally an idiot. I'm just saying that that's how they viewed him, is that they saw him as a useful idiot. They could get to, hey, show him this game where you get to be a cool vampire and look at all the cool combat and, oh, hey, the music and the vibe, it's so good. Look at that. And he had no idea what he was playing. The $30, you don't have to pay it, but more than likely, you're not getting the content. If you think that Paradox tomorrow is going to tell you that they are going to walk back that $30 price tag, at best, it's going to be so they can drop it to $20. That's my guess. Okay. Now, again, I'm gonna put a caveat in place, because I don't want to find out I'm wrong tomorrow. I could be wrong. I could be, and I hope I am. Look, I will happily be wrong. If I'm wrong, great. Fantastic. For once in Paradox's entire career, they read the room and did the right thing. It would be a first, because they have a very storied history of this. You can check into this yourself. I'm surprised that people haven't actually, you see YouTube videos on Activision, EA, and so many other developers. Nobody's talked about Paradox, and I don't understand why, man, because there's a whole rabbit hole to go down there. It's amazing. And the DLC, I couldn't give two shits. I expected that. I'm actually shocked, to be honest with you. I thought they were going to do even worse than what people are mad at. I'm mad because they're calling this game Bloodlines 2, and it's fucking not. Which means that if this game were to ever, say, one day finally be revived by some miracle at this point, and say some philanthropist with tens of millions of dollars to burn was just willing to make this game, now they can't even do that, because the name Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines 2 has been permanently commandeered by Paradox so that they could scam buyers, and I'm calling it what it is. I don't care. Sue me, motherfuckers. I'm calling it a scam. It is. It's a scam, because you are labeling a game a title that implies a certain set of parameters. Those parameters did not happen. And from what we know about this development process, when the Chinese room took over, they offered to make a Vampire the Masquerade game, but they did not want to make a Bloodlines 2. And Paradox told them specifically, yeah, but we're going to keep the name. We're not going to change it, even though they wanted to. It was all about marketing. It's because they don't give a shit, and they just want to make money off of desperate, clamoring nostalgia for the people who, like me, have been waiting almost 20 years to finally play this fucking game. And now I have to sit here and watch as one of the worst companies in the industry puts out a game with the name of the game that I hoped for years would finally be made, when it is not that. And that is the biggest fucking... It's just the biggest fuck you of them all, I would have rather that they had put every single class behind a paywall, made you pay $60 for the base game, but you couldn't actually pick a clan yet until you paid another $30. I literally would rather they have done that than they did what they did, because at least that way I could have played the game that was deserving of the title. And now we'll never really get a chance to see the game that should have been. Or if we do, we're going to have to acknowledge it as a spiritual successor because of the name they decided to steal. Fuck you, Paradox.